Hey everyone, welcome to our Java Basics series. Today we're kicking things off with a fundamental concept in programming, variables. So what exactly is a variable? Think of a variable as a container. Just like you use containers to store different items in real life, in programming, variables are used to store data. These containers or variables hold values like numbers, text, or even more complex data types. But before you can use them, you need to create or initialize them by giving each variable a name and specifying what type of data it will hold. Throughout this lesson, we'll break down how variables work, the different types, and best practices for using them. So let's dive in and learn how to create and use variables in Java. Alright, so let's get into how variables work. A variable in Java needs two key things, a data type and a name. These define what kind of value the variable will hold and how you'll refer to it in your code. Int age. In this example, int is the data type, which means we're telling Java that this variable will store a whole number. Age is the name of our variable, but at this point, the variable doesn't actually have a value yet. We've only declared it. To give it a value, we use an assignment operator, age equals 5. Now age holds the value of 5. We've declared the variable and assigned it a value. Remember, a variable must always be initialized before you can use it in Java. Without this step, your code won't work. Now that we understand what variables are, let's talk about how to name them. Naming variables is important because it makes your code easier to read and maintain. There are some rules you must follow when naming variables in Java. Only use letters, digits, underscores, and $signs. For example, myVariable1 or username are valid names, but myVariable is not. Variable names can't start with a digit. You can use numbers in a name, but it can't begin with 1. So age2 is valid, but toAge is not. No spaces or reserved words. You can't have spaces in variable names, and you can't use Java's reserved words like int, class, or public as variable names. Be descriptive. It's always a good idea to make your variable names meaningful. Instead of naming a variable x, use something like user age or total cost. This makes your code much easier to understand. Good variable names help you and others who read your code understand what the variables represent, making your programs easier to maintain and debug. Now let's talk about the different types of variables in Java. There are two main categories, primitive and non-primitive variables. Primitive types are built directly into Java, meaning they're simple data types like numbers, characters, and booleans. They can only perform a limited set of operations like addition, subtraction, or comparisons. Examples of primitive types: int for whole numbers like 10 or 9 to 5, double for numbers with decimal points like 3.14, boolean for true or false values, char for single characters like a or at. Non-primitive types, on the other hand, are references to objects that you create in memory. These variables can be much more complex and can perform a wide range of operations. Examples include strings, arrays, and objects. The main difference between primitive and non-primitive variables is how they behave in memory. Primitive types are fixed, while non-primitive types are flexible and user-defined. We'll dive deeper into non-primitive types in later lessons. Now, let's focus on primitive variables. These are the simplest and most commonly used types in Java. Each primitive variable holds a specific kind of data, and there are 8 primitive types in total. For this lesson, we'll focus on the most commonly used ones. Int. This is for whole numbers, like 5 or -100. 100. Example, int age equals 25. Double. This stores numbers with decimal points. Example, double weight equals 65.5. Boolean. This is used for true-false values. Example, boolean is rain equals false. This stores single characters, such as a letter or symbol. Example, char grade equals A. These primitive types are directly built into Java and use a fixed amount of memory, which makes them highly efficient for storing basic values. There are also other primitive types like byte, short, long, and float, but you'll likely use int, double, boolean, and char most often. Let's put what we've learned to the test. I'm going to show you a few examples, and your job is to figure out which data type would be best to store each value. Think about whether the value is a whole number, a decimal, a character, or something else. Example 1, true. What data type should we use? The answer is boolean. A boolean is used for true or false values. Example 2, 3.14. What data type should we use? The answer is double. This value has a decimal point, so we use double for numbers like this. Example 3, A. What data type should we use? The answer is char. Since this is a single character, we store it using the char data type. Example 4, 256. What data type should we use? The answer is int, short, or long. This is a whole number, so it could be stored using int, short, or long, depending on the size of the number. Now that you've got the hang of identifying data types, you'll be more confident when declaring variables in your code. Now let's talk about non-primitive variables. These are more complex than the primitive types we just covered. Non-primitive variables refer to objects and data structures that can store more detailed information. Here are some examples of non-primitive variables. String. A string is a sequence of characters, or simply text. Unlike char, which holds a single character, a string can hold words, sentences, or even entire paragraphs. Example, string is star equals hello world. Notice that string starts with a capital S. This is true for all non-primitive types in Java. Arrays and array lists. Arrays and array lists are ways to store multiple values of the same type. Think of them like a list or a table where each element has an index. Example, int numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. Non-primitive variables are more flexible than primitive ones because they can store larger amounts of data and can perform more complex operations. You'll often use these types when working with data structures, objects, or collections. We'll explore more about strings, arrays, and other non-primitive types in future lessons. Now it's your turn. Let's practice creating and assigning variables in Java. I'll walk you through a couple of exercises to solidify what we've learned so far. Exercise 1. Initialize and assign a variable. On one line, initialize a variable representing your current age as a whole number. Example, int age, age 25. Now combine the two steps into one line, int age equals 25. Exercise 2. Create a variable with decimals. Next, let's create a variable for your exact age, which might include a decimal. Try this using the double data type. Example, double exact age equals 25.5. Exercise 3. Declare a string variable. Finally, declare a variable to store your full name. Since we're working with text, you'll use the string data type. Example, string full name equals John Doe. Try these out on your own, and feel free to experiment with different values. Practice makes perfect.
Thank you for watching this video. Make sure you like it and subscribe.